Have you ever needed to say you have a headache in French? Or maybe you wanted to send a birthday card but weren't quite sure what to write? Well, today we're going to cover exactly that. We're going to follow a really simple story about a woman named Hélène, and along the way, we'll pick up some super useful everyday French. So let's dive right in.
All right, let's kick things off with a quick question to get our brains warmed up. What does the French word bobo mean? Have a look at the options there. Okay, if you guessed B, a small health problem, you got it. Un bobo is just a cute, informal way to talk about a little ache, a scrape, or a boo-boo. And these bobos are the perfect starting point for our lesson today.
So let's meet the star of our little story. This is Hélène. And as you can probably tell from the slide, she's not feeling so great today. She's a bit under the weather, which means, sadly, she can't make it to her friend's party. And here we see it in action. Hélène's friend, Maurice, is all ready for a good time, but Hélène has to make that phone call. You know the one, where you have to cancel plans because you're sick. We've all been there, right? But this super common situation gives us the perfect chance to learn some really practical French. Okay, so since Hélène is sick, she needs the words to explain what's wrong. And that brings us to our very first lesson, how to talk about aches and pains in French. This is something you will definitely use. First things first, we need the building blocks, the vocabulary. Let's just go through some basic parts of the body. I'm going to say each one slowly, so try repeating them out loud with me. Ready? La tête, le bras, la jambe, la main, le pied, le dos, and le cou. Excellent! Now let's zoom in a little and focus on the head. Again, listen closely and repeat if you can. L'oreille, le nez, la bouche, la gorge, and les dents. Now here's a fun one to pay attention to. The word for eye. If you're talking about one eye, it's l'œil. But for two eyes, the word changes completely to les yeux. It's one of those little quirks of the language. Let's try it. L'œil and les yeux. So, how do we put all these new words to work? The absolute key phrase you need is j'ai mal à, which basically means my hurts. The thing to remember is that the little word in the middle changes. If the body part is feminine, like la tête, you use à la. So, j'ai mal à la tête. For a masculine one, like le dos, it combines to become au. J'ai mal au dos. And for plural nouns, like les dents, it becomes au. J'ai mal aux dents. All right, time for a little pop quiz. Take a look at these pictures. The first one is done for us. Il a mal à la tête. He has a headache. Now, what about the others? How would you describe what's hurting them? Go ahead and think it through. This is exactly how you start putting real sentences together. Okay, let's get back to our story. Hélène feels pretty bad about missing the party, so she decides to do something nice and thoughtful. She's going to send a card. And this takes us perfectly from talking about being sick to sending good wishes. So what does Hélène actually write in the card? Well, here are three absolute classics. We've got Bonne année, which is for Happy New Year. Then Bonne fête. Now, this can mean happy birthday, but it's often used for a person's name day, which is a really cool cultural thing to know. And finally, one you can use all the time, Bonne journée, have a good day. All right, let's play a little matching game. On the left, we have the situation. On the right, the French wish. See if you can connect the right wish to the right event. I'll give you a second. Okay, ready? Let's check the answers. For a new baby, you'd say Félicitations pour votre bébé. New job, that's Félicitations pour ton nouveau travail. A wedding is Meilleurs vœux de mariage. And for someone in the hospital, you wish them a prompt rétablissement. Get well soon. How'd you do? And of course, people send cards for all sorts of holidays too. There's Noël for Christmas, Le Jour de l'An for New Year's Day, and Pax for Easter. And yeah, you can definitely send chocolate for that one. And of course, there's La Saint-Valentin for Valentine's Day. So, Hélène has figured out her message. Now for the practical part. How does she actually get the card in the mail? Let's break down those final crucial steps. Here's a tiny detail that's actually really important in greeting cards, the exclamation point. In French, it's called le point d'exclamation. And just like in English, you use it to show strong feelings, joy, excitement, all that good stuff. It's what makes a wish feel really genuine.
Now, to mail that card, Helene is going to need a stamp. And speaking of stamps, here is a fantastic bit of trivia for you. Did you know that the world's very first postage stamp to ever feature an animal was Canadian? It's true.
And the animal was, you guessed it, a beaver. Of course it was. This little piece of history was made on April 23rd, 1851, and it cost just 3 pence. You gotta remember, back then, stamps were pretty serious. They usually had pictures of rulers or official symbols, so putting an animal on one was a pretty big deal.
Okay, back to Hélène and her card. Here's exactly how to address an envelope using the common format in Quebec. It's really simple. Step 1, your name and address. The sender, or l'expéditeur, goes in the top left. Step 2, the person you're sending it to, the recipient, or le destinataire, goes right in the middle. And step 3, the stamp, le timbre, goes in the top right. Easy as that.
And here is exactly what that looks like. On the left, we see Helene's address as the sender, and on the right, we have Valérie's address as the recipient. Just notice the format. It's always the name, then the street address, and then the city, province, and postal code. Wow, we have covered a lot of ground today. We went from aches and pains all the way to addressing an envelope. So let's just take a second to do a quick review of everything we've learned.
So what can you do now that you couldn't do before? Well, you can name parts of the body, you know how to use that super important phrase, j'aime la, you can write different wishes for different occasions, and you even know how to properly address an envelope. That is a ton of useful, practical French to have in your back pocket.
And now, to make sure all of this really sticks, I've got one last little challenge for you. In French, we'd say, à vous, it's your turn. Using everything we just learned, how would you write a simple birthday wish to a colleague? Go ahead and try to write a full sentence. Seriously, doing it yourself is the absolute best way to make these new skills your own. Thanks so much for joining me today.